This is the Lee Enoch Show. Lee Enochs here at UNT with esteemed scholar, libertarian economist, Dr. Walter Block. Walter, this is the 15th time. This is the anniversary, 15th episode of my show. I think I've done 120 shows, and you've been on 15 times. Somebody said, Lee, are you pretty libertarian? I think I am. I wouldn't be having Walter Block on my show so often. I've had some major conservative scholars on my show, but I always come back to you. You're kind of my libertarian sensei in many ways. And there's a lot been going on lately. I've been thinking about you. I've been under siege because I just don't. Now, I'll just preface this before I give it over to you. And I said to you before we started recording, what Trump can do is different than should he do this. Now, I thought that Maduro, like Hugo Chavez, were heinous people, horrible people, just not even true communists. These guys are exploiting, just sucking the money out of one of the richest families in Venezuela. They probably don't even live there anymore. Is the Chavez family? The daughter, Hugo Chavez's daughter, is a billionaire by all accounts. Like I think I read she's worth $4 or $5 billion. It doesn't even. She's got Swiss bank accounts. These people like that, and like Daniel Ortega in Nicaragua, they just claimed a communist or democratic socialist ticket or perspective, but they're just exploiting people. Now, I don't deny that Maduro was a horrible person or is a horrible person. People of Venezuela deserve better. They're great people. They have really good food down there, by the way. And I've met one of my friends' mother-in-laws is from Venezuela. Beautiful people. Now, whether Trump should just do that, he says now effectively, I'm now in charge. I am the acting president of Venezuela. How does this work with libertarianism, Walter? And welcome. Happy New Year. Glad to have you back on the show. I know that's a lot to ask you right off the bat, but we've been through this many times. Walter, what do you think? What's your take on it? What say ye, as they would say?
Well, the way I see things, and you ask 10 libertarians a question and you'll get 11 answers. We're famous for disagreeing with each other. So I can't speak for all libertarians. I can certainly speak for myself. The way I look at it, from the anarcho-capitalist libertarian point of view, Donald should resign and there should be no U.S. government. And we have not much to say. However, let's look at it from the minarchist point of view, or the constitutionalist point of view, or the classical liberal point of view, where a president is a legitimate person and he was elected, and his goal or his function is to protect the people of the United States. Now, if that's his goal, then the way we have to look at this is, did his actions, or would they protect the people of the United States? And I think a strong case can be made that yes, Donald was justified because his job is to protect the American people. And a case can be made that zapping Venezuela, to put it informally, getting rid of this Maduro dictator, is of some help. And I think we can make 2 points in this regard. First, is the U.S. better off with a Venezuela that is like Cuba, or is the U.S. better off with a Venezuela that looks like Argentina? Well, Argentina is a strong supporter of the United States, an ally of the United States. If the U.S. were in trouble, Argentina would help us. On the other hand, Cuba is not an ally of the United States. If the United States were in trouble, Cuba would pile on with our enemy. So I think it's clear to say that a Venezuela that's like Cuba, like it was under Maduro, is an enemy of ours and will weaken us, whereas a Venezuela that is like Argentina will strengthen us because they will not be our enemy. And what Donald has done Now, people say, well, his motivation was for oil. I don't care about his motivation. I care about his action. His action was to erase the communistic or the fascistic or the totalitarian elements of the Venezuela, which would be against the U.S. And hopefully he will now substitute a group that is more like Javier Milei of Argentina. And if he is successful in that, and forget about whether he's successful or not, the question is, should he try it? Should he do it? If he's successful, great. If not, not so great. But that's not the question. The question is not whether he's successful. The question is, should he try to do it? And I think that the case can be made that, yes, he should try to do it, because if he did it, the American people would be safer. And that's his job, to safeguard the American people. Now, there is one other element, and that is that not only will Venezuela, that looks like Argentina, not be our enemy, but it'll be our friend, and it will be able to help us if we are in trouble. Now, it's true that the Venezuelan army is no great shakes, but still, a little help is better than an enmity. I would make an analogy with Israel. Should the U.S. help Israel? Well, the U.S. is the most powerful military in the world. I think Russia and China, or China and Russia, are number 2 and 3. You know who's number 4? Israel. So if the United States were in trouble, Israel, an ally that we helped, would be able to help us greatly, much more than Venezuela. And also especially because what they specialize is in high tech. And that would be particularly of help. They don't have much brawn, but they have a lot of brain. So helping Israel would be the same sort of a thing as helping Venezuela. Now, with regard to Greenland, I think the case is much more difficult to maintain, that it would be in the interests of the United States to have Greenland as the 51st state, or whatever the relationship would be, because Greenland is willing to allow U.S. Army installations to be placed there. And we already have U.S. military installations in Greenland. And Greenland would certainly allow more, and would certainly allow more U.S. Laboratories there to discover about rare earth metals or whatever it is that they would do. So it seems very difficult to make the case that it would be in the U.S. interest. Now, there is another element of this, and that libertarians are not only interested, U.S. libertarians should not only be interested in safeguarding America. That's a big thing. But we should also be interested in upholding the non-aggression principle. And Maduro is a violator of the non-aggression principle. He's killing masses of people. He's, ruining the country. He's making it a socialist country. Venezuela, I think, has got more oil reserves than Saudi Arabia, or at least it's close. It could be a very valuable country. So he's ruining the country, and also he's killing a lot of innocent people. Now, take Iran. And what's going on with Iran right now, it's very similar. The Ayatollahs are ruining their country, and not only ruining their country, but they regard us as the big Satan. Israel is the little Satan. Well, I regard them as the middle-sized Satan. They are a Satan, whereas I don't regard Israel and the U.S. as satanic at all. And right now they're slaughtering tens of thousands of people, or at least thousands of people, who are just protesting against their rule. Women who don't have a hair covering can be executed. I mean, that's just preposterous. They're not democratic. They have no legitimacy, no legitimate title here. Not that I'm a big fan of democracy. I'm a fan of Hans Hoppe on democracy and monarchy, but still they have no justification whatsoever, no scintilla of justification for running that country, running it into the ground. So, the U.S. already did help Israel with Iran, namely the nuclear facility that they had in this deep mountain that Israel didn't have the facility to knock out, and the U.S. did. And I think that Donald did a magnificent job there, and I applaud Donald for that. And if Donald were now to go in Iran and start pulverizing their barracks or whatever it is that would take to get rid of the Ayatollahs and support the people of Iran. I mean, the people of Iran don't look upon the U.S. as the big Satan or Israel as the little Satan. The people of Iran, I happen to know some of them personally, are just ordinary folk like you and I, just want to have a reasonable life. They want to have their women be able to go out without headdress or whatever that they use. So I think in the case of Iran, in the case of Venezuela, the U.S. Intervention is justified. In the case of Greenland, it's not. Now, what I'm now saying will stick in the craw of a lot of libertarians, because a lot of libertarians think isolationism. Isolationism is the key. The U.S. should just mind its own business. And by the way, they have, I think, 800 foreign military bases, and I can't see the justification for them either. I mean, they've got a military base in about 150 countries, and there are only, I don't know, 250 countries. I'm not sure how many countries there are, but I can't see the great justification for that, because every time two factions start fighting, the U.S. is right in the middle of it, and I don't think the U.S. should be in the middle of everything. It shouldn't be the world policeman. But the idea is, I don't think the libertarian view is isolation, pure and simple, any more than I think let's take a private defense agency. I'm now going to be your protector. You just hired me to be your bodyguard. And what I do is instead I go off and I help Joe over here. Did I violate the contract with you? Well, superficially, I certainly did. I'm supposed to stick with you. But I went off and helped Joe. Now, the justification for that could be, look, I'm the expert in protecting you. You hired me because I'm an expert. And in my view, the best way to help you is to help Joe. Well, if the best way to help you is to help Joe, well, then I'm entirely justified in helping Joe and leaving you alone for the moment, because I think that the ultimate safety of you, you're my client, your ultimate safety depends very importantly on keeping Joe safe. He's an ally or whatever the specifics are, doesn't matter. So isolationism means that I have to stick by you. But I don't see that isolation is the be-all and the end-all of libertarianism. Rather, the be-all and end-all of libertarianism is to uphold my contract to protect you. And I'm doing it by helping Joe. Well, helping Joe on the international level is non-isolationism. So this would be my view, that there's nothing per se that requires the U.S. government, assuming it's a legitimate government, to be isolationist. And what we have to do in every case when they intervene in other countries, we have to ask, is it compatible with libertarianism or not? Does it promote liberty? Does it promote freedom? Does it protect the people? And when it does, in Iran and in Venezuela, yes. And when it doesn't, or at least the case in favor of it in Greenland, it doesn't, well, then we shouldn't.
Well, that's a lot. Let me ask a couple questions. I know we got about 15 minutes or less, so I want to honor your time, but there's a couple things. Two things when I was listening to what you had to say, and I appreciate that, being articulate about that. First of all, if Trump does take Greenland by military force, which is not going to be difficult, obviously, we just displayed that in Venezuela that we can do, and in Iran, that you mentioned it, we have the most sophisticated army machine, military machine in the face of the earth or in the history of the world. you know, that there's no possibility that Greenland. I think there was a movie, I think it was Stripes, where Canada was like, it was a funny thing, like, is Canada like won against America? It would end within hours, right? I mean, so obviously, there's no possibility that Greenland is going to, being held by Denmark is going to, But the point I want to make, let me before I
It's
say this.
it's like it's like Grenada when the U.S.
Oh
beat
yeah,
Grenada. It didn't take
yeah,
much.
yeah. So but here's the issue. My concern is NATO, that you're going to effectively end NATO, and people, in the eyes of many people, if Trump takes it by force, he's no better than Putin in Ukraine, just taking it by force. So I think there's a better approach to do than negotiate things like you're talking about. Let's not do the military conquest thing, because you're going to be anathema to Europe. They're already gearing up. Right now they're doing military drills. It's kind of almost like weekend warrior thing with it, but they're doing practice drills like for America's invasion, and it's almost stupid that they're doing that, because there's no possibility that they can contest against America, especially in this iteration of America with this raising Cane. They're not messing around. There's nothing Denmark can do, but I just think you're going to risk alienating all your allies in Europe. The second thing I wanted to say about it, for me, is that there's going to come a point in time where Trump is going to do one of these military adventures, maybe Cuba, maybe Iran. I think Iran would be a better case, where it could potentially end up being another Vietnam, where we go in there and we think we're going to be able to just, end this. But look what happened in Afghanistan, and just some prolonged thing. Now, I know Trump wants to have a swift end to these things, but like the old adage, cry war, and so release the dogs of war. Like, once you take this approach and you go down this military path, there's a potential that one of these things might end up in a World War One kind of concept. Probably not, but just being bogged down in some really costly military adventure that of Trump's doing, that we don't want to go down, right? And so those would be my major problems with it. I'm not really bound by any interpretation of a non-aggression thing, other than the fact that Trump said in the campaign on no more forever wars. And I know that, and I guess a third question to you, in a limited time, is that Thomas Massey, who has become like probably one of the main guys that are tweaking Trump's nose right now, who is very libertarianish in his approach. Thomas Massey and Rand Paul have been against do these things. So I guess the three things I would like you to address in the remaining time that we have is it the wisest thing to alienate your allies like France and Germany and England, and potentially end NATO? And then is it possible that Trump could do one of these things and become this major conflict that he didn't foresee, and bog us down to almost a Vietnam War thing? And then lastly, why are other libertarians out there, or libertarianish uh, public figures like Justin Amash, Thomas Massey, and Rand Paul, and even Ron Paul, are been opposed? You seem like you're much more sympathetic to these military, they're calling it adventures, than some of your compadres in the libertarian movement. So I
Yes,
don't know.
I think you put it very well. There is this group called antiwar.com, and Lou Rockwell has a thing what is it? Pro free enterprise, pro liberty, and pro peace, or anti-war. I forget which way he puts it. Well, I think that's a mistake. We libertarians are not anti-war. We're anti-aggressive war. We're anti-initiatory war, but we're not anti-defensive war. If somebody attacks us, we should be able to fight back. We should have a war against them. Even Murray Rothbard favored two wars that I know of. One, the South against the North, and the other, the 13 colonies against England. So the idea that you're going to be a knee-jerk opponent of war, a knee-jerk pusher of peace. That sounds a nice alliteration there.
Peace pusher.
Is not necessarily libertarian. Now, look, you could be a pacifist and be a libertarian, but you don't have to be a pacifist to be a libertarian. You can be a pro-defensive war. Now, the question is it the defensive war? Is it a successful war? Now, look, I don't favor the incursion in Vietnam, and I don't favor the incursion in Afghanistan because they didn't work. They weren't they weren't protecting the American people. They were unearthing the American people. They were weakening the American people. Now, let me talk a little bit about NATO. What should have happened in when was it? 1991, when East Germany and West Germany unified. I forget the exact year.
90, right?
1991. What
Yeah.
What should have happened is that NATO should have disbanded. And the other side, what was it? What was the opposite of NATO? The Eastern Bloc agreement. Do you remember what it was called?
Yeah, but yeah, I don't understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Okay, that should have disbanded. Both of them should have disbanded because the Soviet Union agreed to have East Germany and West Germany united, and it was the end of the Cold War. And by the way, NATO promised that it would not move east after this occurred. And you'll never guess what happened. NATO kept moving east. Now, look, Germany has invaded Russia, I think either 2 or 3 times in the last the century before. And France, a century before that, had invaded Russia. The only time Russia invaded Germany was in World War II, after Germany first started up. Namely, Russia was defensive. They were our ally. So the whole point about that Ukrainian thing, Putin kept saying, look, here's a red line. If you move further east on NATO, we're not going to be very happy campers. And now they move further east, and then they move further east. Look what happened in 1962 in the Cuban Missile Crisis, as an analogy of moving east. The U.S. had many, many military bases all around Russia. 30 or 40 of them in Turkey, here and there and everywhere. And now the Russians had the audacity to put one armament in Cuba, and the U.S. went berserk. The U.S. went apoplectic. Namely, it's okay for us, the U.S., to have military bases around Russia, but not for them to have anything near us. Well, this is highly problematic. The U.S. is being hypocritical. The U.S. should have pulled out its encirclement of the Soviet Union, or of Russia later, after the Russia took the place of the Soviet Union. So I think that the key with NATO is NATO should have been disbanded a long time ago. The Eastern Bloc should have been disbanded. The Eastern Bloc did disband. And the Soviet Union split up into 15 different countries, and it could have been peaceful. So I think that NATO was very much in the wrong in moving eastward. And then the last straw was that they were going to put in Ukraine in NATO. Well, the U.S. objected to having military bases in Cuba because it's 90 miles away from Florida. Well, how far away is Ukraine from Russia? Not 90 miles, 90 inches. I mean, they're contiguous. So I'm against the U.S. taking over Greenland. It'll mess up NATO, and it'll mess up Denmark. But I'm not a big fan of NATO. I don't. The problem with that is that Greenland, I don't see how Greenland is helping the U.S. So for me, I'm not a knee-jerk non-interventionist like Ron Paul, like Rand Paul. I mean, I revere those guys, Thomas Massey. I think they're magnificent libertarians, but I respectfully disagree with them because they have this principle of non-aggression. And I've tried to illustrate when I was your guard, I was your guard, and I went off and I helped Joe or Pete over here in another country. There's nothing wrong with that. And if there's nothing wrong with doing it on an individual basis, why should there be something wrong in doing it on on a national basis. There's nothing wrong with the U.S. having allies. I think Israel is a great ally. I think Argentina is a great ally. And now, hopefully, Venezuela will be a great ally. And maybe Iran will be a great ally. And if Donald doesn't deserve the Peace Prize, the Nobel Peace Prize, he deserves something even more more important. Don't ask me what it is. I'm saying he richly deserves that if he succeeds, and I think he's on the right path. If he goes into Iran and saves the Iranian people from these ayatollahs who are just mowing down people, I would applaud him. And Massey
Well,
and those guys would not.
Walter, I want to respect your time. We got about 2 minutes, but let's talk about let's talk some housekeeping things in the future. Wade Burleson, I think he had some kind of medical thing he had to take care of. He couldn't be here tonight, but he has a very honest. He wants to have an honest discussion with you about abortion. We want to give you bulk of the time. Let's have more time on that, like an hour, for you to flesh out your view on abortion. And I want to bring up an issue. We can talk about this off camera, but I'm very interested in doing co-authoring a book with you, a college textbook, introduction to libertarianism. That we can work together on, because we're both of us are not getting any younger, and this life might look at me. I almost got killed this a couple days ago, and I'm thank God that that he kept me alive. But we'll talk about that in the future, Walter. You're a highly honored guest here, and let me figure out what's going on with Wade. But he wants to. You couldn't have a bigger fan than Wade Burleson. He's a pretty major heavy hitter guy in the Southern Baptist Convention that thinks of you very highly. That your argument for Israel is very compelling, and I have no problem. Sometimes I'll play devil's advocate, but I would probably be in the 90 percentile of agreement with you on most things. So let's talk soon. We'll talk off camera. We'll go back and forth. But when Wade Burleson is up and ready to go at it, let's have him back and you guys talk again. And I do want last thing I'll say to you is I do want to address your alleged cancellation by the I think it's stupid. You're not canceled here. You're highly favored and welcome here anytime. I think it's ridiculous, and I repudiate any cancellation. I think it's hypocritical to try to censor a free speech advocate. But let's let you get on with your day, what you got to do. We'll talk soon, Walter. God bless you, my friend.
Take care. Thanks for having me again. It's always a pleasure.
All right. Talk to you soon. Anyways, folks, that's been Walter Block, the famous libertarian economist who was a protege of Ayn Rand, the author of Atlas Shrugged and The Fountainhead. We'll circle back to talk to him in the future. This has been Lee Enochs, and I am a Christian. I did get in an accident. I thank God for Jesus Christ, who died and rose again to give us life eternal. If you're out there and you don't know Christ, trust him today. Our lives are short. We love you. Have a great day.